3 seconds. That was all it took. One moment, Rafael Caruso, the man who owned half of Las Vegas and answered to no one, had his hand wrapped around Maya's wrist, squeezing hard enough to leave marks, laughing that low, poisonous laugh of his, while his bodyguards watched and said nothing. The next moment, the laughter stopped. There was a crack, a gasp that swept across the entire poker floor, and Rafael Caruso was face down on the marble with his arm wrenched behind his back and Maya's knee pressed between his shoulder blades. She leaned down close to his ear. "I told you not to touch me," she said quietly. "You didn't listen." That was the night everything changed. That was the night Maya Chen stopped being invisible. She had been invisible for 2 years. That was the job. Blend in, take orders, smile at the right moments, disappear into the background of the Obsidian, the most exclusive private casino in Las Vegas. A place where the carpets cost more than most people's homes and the men who sat at the baccarat tables could buy and sell politicians before breakfast. Maya wore the uniform, fitted black blazer, white gloves, a small gold name pin, and she moved through the high roller rooms like a ghost. Quiet, efficient, forgettable. That was exactly what she needed to be. Because Maya Chen wasn't just a cocktail server. She had been a lot of things before this job, things she didn't talk about, things that had cost her more than she was willing to admit. Now she was a woman with a sick mother in a care facility in Henderson's, Nevada, with bills that arrived like clockwork every first of the month and a reason to stay very, very small, until the night she couldn't. The Obsidian's VIP floor was invitation only. Maya had been assigned there 6 weeks ago, a promotion she hadn't asked for and hadn't wanted, but the money was better and her mother's new medication wasn't cheap. She had calibrated herself for the environment quickly. She knew which guests wanted their drinks refreshed without being asked, and which ones wanted to be left alone. She knew how to absorb the casual cruelty of men who treated service staff like furniture. She had been very good at absorbing it. Rafael Caruso tested that skill from the first night she served him. He was the kind of handsome that came with a warning label. Sharp jaw, dark eyes, expensive watch, a way of occupying space that made it seem like the room had been built around him. He was 36, the CEO of Caruso Holdings on paper and the head of the most powerful family in the western United States in reality. The FBI had been building a case against him for years. They kept running into walls. He noticed Maya the same way he noticed everything, with complete, dissecting attention, like he was cataloging her for future reference. "You don't smile," he said, the first time she set a glass in front of him. "I smile when there's something to smile about, sir," she replied. He had looked at her for a long moment, and something shifted in his expression. Not warmth, more like the flicker of a predator registering something unexpected. She had filed it away and moved on. But he watched her. Every night he was in the Obsidian, and he was there often. She could feel his attention like a hand on the back of her neck. He never crossed a line. Not at first. He was too controlled for that, too practiced. He made comments that walked right up to the edge without stepping over, and when she didn't flinch, he seemed to find that more interesting than if she had. 6 weeks of that. 6 weeks of staying in her lane, keeping her head down, remembering why she was there. Then came the night a guest at table 7 spilled a drink on Rafael Caruso's sleeve. It was an accident. A nervous hedge fund manager named Briggs, 3 bourbons deep, gesturing too broadly during a story no one was listening to. The glass tipped, amber liquid splashed across the cuff of Caruso's custom shirt, and the entire table went silent with the particular terror of people who understood exactly who they were sitting next to. Maya was already moving. She had a clean cloth in her hand before the glass finished rolling. She pressed it against the stain efficiently, professionally, the way she had handled 100 minor disasters in 2 years. "I'll have this taken care of, Mr. Caruso," she said. He caught her wrist, not urgently, not violently, just caught it. His hand wrapped around her wrist the way you'd pick up something that belonged to you, and he pulled her hand away from his sleeve and held it, studying her face. "You move fast," he said. "It's my job," she said, keeping her voice level. "Please let go, in a moment." He tilted his head. "What's your name?" "Maya," he repeated, the same way you'd say a word in a foreign language that you weren't sure you were pronouncing correctly. "How long have you worked here?" 2 years. Please let go of my wrist, Mr. Caruso." The table was watching. His 2 bodyguards, a man named Dex and one called Priest, were watching. The hedge fund manager who'd caused the spill had gone the color of old chalk. Caruso smiled. It was a slow smile, and it didn't touch his eyes. "I'm working," Maya said. "Please." He let go, but the smile stayed, and something in his gaze had shifted from interested to fixed, the way a compass needle swings to north and stops. Maya collected her cloth and walked back to the service station. Her hand was shaking. Not from fear. She had faced things that made Rafael Caruso look like a minor inconvenience, but from the effort of not reacting, of staying in the role, of being the cocktail server who didn't matter. She was good at that effort. She had been good at it for a long time. But it was getting harder. The second incident happened 12 days later. She was clearing glasses from a side table near the baccarat pit when she heard it, a sound she had been trained to recognize. The specific cadence of a conversation that wasn't a conversation. Two men at the edge of the room, speaking in close, clipped sentences, their bodies angled so no one could read their lips from the cameras. One of them was Victor Slade, the Obsidian's head of operations, a man who smiled too easily and whose eyes were always doing a separate calculation from his mouth. The other was someone she had never seen before, Eastern European accent, broad shoulders. The kind of expensive coat that made him look like wealth, not like someone who had earned it honestly. She didn't stop moving. She cleared glasses with the same rhythm she always used, but she was listening, enough to catch two words that made her stomach drop. The Rhodes File. She knew that name. She knew it in a way that reached back 4 years and cost her everything she had been before this uniform and these white gloves. She made it through the rest of her shift. She clocked out, walked to her car, sat in the parking structure for 9 minutes without starting the engine. The Rhodes File was why she was here, not because the Obsidian paid well. Not because she needed the money, though she did. She was here because 18 months of careful, methodical, silent work had led her to this casino, to this floor, to the orbit of Rafael Caruso, who she believed. Who she knew was the key to recovering the thing that had destroyed her career and nearly destroyed her life. She had not planned on him noticing her. The third incident was the one that broke the performance entirely. It was a Friday. The VIP floor was full, the kind of crowd that generated its own pressure. A room full of people who were accustomed to having whatever they wanted and didn't like being reminded that limits existed. Maya was moving between tables with a tray when Rafael Caruso appeared beside her. Not from across the room this time, not from his usual throne in the center booth, but right next to her, close enough that she could smell the cedar and smoke of his cologne. "Walk with me," he said quietly. "I'm working, Mr. Caruso." He didn't move away. Walk with me anyway. There were rules about this, guest relations protocols. A cocktail server did not leave the floor with a high-value guest. Maya knew the rules. She also knew that the man next to her had almost certainly had people hurt for smaller refusals than this. She set the tray on a service station and walked with him. He led her to the private corridor behind the high-roller suites, a stretch of hallway lined with abstract art and very good lighting. Empty, no cameras. Or cameras that were managed by people who understood what privacy meant in an establishment like this. He stopped and turned to face her. "You've been watching Victor Slade," he said. Maya's expression didn't change. "I don't know what you mean, you do." He studied her the same way he always did, like she was a document he was reading for the second time, looking for what he'd missed the first pass. "You've been watching him for weeks. You're careful about it, but not careful enough." "Not with me. I serve drinks," Maya said. "I watch people because I need to anticipate what they need. That's the job, that's one explanation." He took a step toward her. "Here's another. You're not a cocktail server. You're something else, and you chose this floor deliberately, and whatever you're looking for, you think Victor is connected to it." Her pulse was even. She had trained for interrogations harder than this. "Mr. Caruso, I think you've had a long night. I haven't been drinking." His voice was entirely level. "I don't drink when I'm working, and I'm always working." He reached out and took her hand, not the wrist this time, but her hand, turning it over to look at the inside of her forearm, at the small faded scar near the inner elbow. "That's a training scar," he said. "Rappelling harness. You get them when you go down a line fast enough times." He looked up at her. "Where did you train, Maya?" She pulled her hand back. "You're wrong, I'm not." He said it, without heat, without urgency, the way someone states a known fact. "And I think you know I'm not, which means we have a problem." She looked at him. The performance, the carefully constructed, 2-year-old version of herself that was quiet and forgettable and invisible, was tearing at the seams. She could feel it. "What kind of problem?" she asked. "The kind where you're operating in my house without telling me why," he said. "And in my experience, people who do that are either working for someone who wants to take something from me, or they're in trouble deep enough that they couldn't afford to ask permission." He paused. "Which one are you?" She said nothing. He stepped closer, and the corridor felt smaller. "Last chance to tell me yourself before I find out another way." Something snapped in Maya Chen. It wasn't fear, and it wasn't desperation. It was the 2-year accumulation of being small and invisible and careful and contained, and it reached its absolute limit at that exact moment, in that corridor, with this man's eyes fixed on her like she was something he intended to acquire. "Move back," she said. He didn't. She moved instead, fast, the way she'd been trained, the way muscle memory worked when you stopped thinking and started reacting. She caught his wrist with both hands, stepped into his space, and used his own forward lean against him. It was a textbook redirection, the kind that turned aggression into momentum into loss of balance. Rafael Caruso, for the second time in 6 weeks, was not where he expected to be. He caught the wall with one hand before he went down, just barely. They stood there for a moment, both of them breathing harder than they had a moment ago, 2 feet apart, her hands empty, his eyes doing something she hadn't seen before. Not anger, not even surprise exactly. Something closer to recognition. "There it is," he said softly. "Don't touch me without permission again," Maya said. Her voice was steady. Everything else wasn't. "Not the wrist, not the hand, not any of it. I'm not asking." He straightened up, adjusted his jacket, looked at her with that same fixed attention, and she realized the calculation in his gaze had shifted completely. He wasn't reading her like a document anymore. He was reading her like something he hadn't encountered before and didn't yet have a category for. "Who sent you?" he asked. "Nobody trained you. Nobody got you assigned to my floor. Nobody gave you 6 weeks of access to my operation and didn't tell me." He shook his head. "Try again. I came here on my own," she said. "Because Victor Slade has something that belongs to me, and because the people who should have helped me get it back decided it was easier to burn me than to admit they made a mistake." The words came out before she fully decided to say them. It happened like that sometimes, under pressure, the truth just surfacing, like something too buoyant to hold down. Caruso was very still. "What does he have? A file? Encrypted. It contains records that prove I didn't do what I was accused of doing 4 years ago." She kept her eyes on his. "It's the only copy, and if I don't get it back, I spend the rest of my life a fugitive from an agency that would rather let me rot than admit they were wrong." The silence held. "Agents," he repeated. The word landed between them like something with weight. He didn't ask which one. She didn't confirm it. He looked at her for a long time. She had the uncomfortable feeling that she had just handed him leverage she couldn't take back, and that Rafael Caruso was a man who knew exactly what to do with leverage. "Go back to the floor," he said finally. "Finish your shift. Don't do anything with Slade tonight." He pushed off the wall and straightened his jacket again. "We'll talk tomorrow. We're talking right now." "Tomorrow," he said, "when I know more." He glanced back at her from the corridor entrance. "And Maya, don't run. If you run, I'll know by morning, and that will make things complicated in ways I don't think either of us wants." He walked back towards the floor. Maya stood in the empty corridor for 30 seconds, breathing evenly, cataloging everything she'd just done wrong. Then she went back to work. She didn't sleep that night. She sat at the small kitchen table in her apartment in North Las Vegas with a cup of tea she forgot to drink and went through everything she knew about Rafael Caruso. The public version, board memberships, charitable donations, the face of the city's largest privately held real estate portfolio, and the version that didn't appear in any public filing, the one she had assembled over 18 months from fragments and inference and sources who no longer existed in any official capacity. He was not a good man. She understood that without needing to examine it too closely. But he was a precise man, and a consistent one, and in her experience, precise men kept their word as a matter of professional integrity, even when it cost them something. She thought about her mother, about the care facility in Henderson and the medication schedule pinned to the bulletin board in her apartment, about the file Victor Slade was planning to sell in 4 days to a buyer whose name she didn't know yet, which would make everything in it inaccessible to her permanently. She went to the Obsidian the next day on her day off, through a service entrance, wearing street clothes, and was met in a basement conference room by a man named Arlo, who worked for Rafael Caruso in a capacity that was never specified but clearly covered situations exactly like this one. He led her upstairs. Caruso's private office at the Obsidian occupied the top corner of the building, with windows that faced east so he could watch the sun come up over the desert every morning. It was a room that looked like concentration. No clutter, no personal photographs, nothing decorative that wasn't also functional. He was behind the desk when she came in, jacket off, reading something on a tablet. He looked up. "Set that down. Sit," he said. She sat. "Your name isn't Maya Chen," he said. "It wasn't a question." "It is now," she replied. "The real one was Mara Callahan," he said, age 31. Former case officer with the Defense Intelligence Agency. Flagged for unauthorized exfiltration of classified material 4 years ago. Officially suspended, quietly discredited. File closed, case officer listed as an ongoing person of interest. He leaned back. "That's what the official record says." She said nothing. "Unofficially," he continued, "my people found 3 separate data points suggesting the material wasn't exfiltrated by you, suggesting someone else accessed the files using your credentials and then moved fast enough to make you the most convenient explanation." He paused. Victor Slade's name appears in the same window in a different context, in a way that the official investigation didn't pursue. Maya, looked at him. She kept her face steady. How did you find all of that in one night? I didn't, he said. I had most of it already. I had Victor under surveillance for 4 months. He's been bleeding information to 3 different buyers, and he's been doing it through infrastructure connected to a competitor who's been moving against this city for 2 years. He watched her. The Rhodes file isn't just about you. It's about 6 operations that will be dead in the water if it reaches the buyer on Thursday. Thursday. She hadn't told him which day. He had known already. You've been running your own operation on my floor, she said. Yes. And Slade doesn't know, he suspects, which is why he's moving Thursday instead of next month. He folded his hands on the desk. You want the file. I need to stop the sale and recover the data. We have the same problem, and we've both been working it separately for longer than we should have been. He looked at her evenly. Work with me. She thought about what that meant, what it would cost, who Rafael Caruso was, and what it would make her if she sat across his desk and said yes. If I do this, she said carefully, I need the file, all of it. Not a copy, not a version, the original drive, in my hands. Agreed, and I need your word that when this is done, I walk. No obligations, no debt. No, you work for me now because you know too much. Something shifted in his expression. Brief, almost imperceptible. You've thought about that. I've thought about all of it. He was quiet for a moment. Then, you have my word. She didn't know if that was worth anything. She also didn't know what other choice she had. Tell me the plan, she said. The plan involved Mara doing what she had been doing for 6 weeks, showing up on the VIP floor, serving drinks, being invisible. But with one difference. This time, she was wired, and this time she knew exactly what she was looking for. Victor Slade was going to move the drive Thursday. He needed to hand off a decryption key first, a separate device, small enough to carry in a jacket pocket, which would be delivered by a courier at the casino on Wednesday night. If they intercepted the key before it reached Slade, the drive became worthless to the buyer. Simple on paper. 4 days of staying calm and watching the right person without letting him know she was watching. But on Tuesday night, everything moved up. She saw it happen in real time. The courier, a woman she didn't recognize, arriving 2 days early, moving through the gaming floor with the specific non-urgency of someone trying very hard to look like they belonged. Mara felt it in her chest before she consciously identified it, that old trained instinct, the sense of something off. She pressed her earpiece and spoke quietly into the air as though talking to herself. He's moving tonight. Courier is on the floor. East entrance, grey jacket, dark hair. From the earpiece, Arlo's voice clipped. Copy. We need 5, you have 2, she said. She set down her tray at the service station. She walked toward the east gaming floor with the purposeful calm of someone attending to a task, and she positioned herself between the courier and the hallway that led to Slade's office. The courier clocked her. Mara saw it. The tiny recalculation, the woman's trajectory shifting 1/2 a degree. Mara shifted with her. For a moment they were 2 people navigating a crowded casino floor, and anyone watching would have seen nothing unusual. Then the courier stopped, looked directly at Mara, made a decision. She turned and walked fast toward the main exit. Mara followed. Outside, the desert night hit her like cold water, dry and sharp, the temperature dropping fast the way it did in the Nevada desert after sundown. The strip lights were a sodium blur a mile to the south. The Obsidian's private lot was nearly empty this side of the building. The courier was running. Mara ran too. She wasn't thinking about the cocktail server persona or the 2 years of careful invisibility. She was thinking about Thursday and a drive that contained the proof that her name was worth something, and a mother in a care facility who needed her to still be free in 30 days. She caught the courier at the lot's far edge. Not violently. She stepped into the woman's path and stopped her with both hands on her shoulders, spin and brace, the courier off balance and backed against a parked car with Mara in front of her. The key, Mara said. Give it to me and walk away. The woman looked at her with something that wasn't quite fear, more like assessment. Who do you work for? Myself, Mara said. The key. The courier reached into her jacket slowly, deliberately, making it clear her hand was not going for a weapon, and produced a small black device the size of a USB drive. She held it out. Mara took it. The courier straightened, looked at her for a moment longer, then walked away into the dark of the parking lot without another word. Mara stood there with the device in her hand, and her heart going at twice its normal speed. She turned back toward the Obsidian's service entrance. Rafael Caruso was standing there. He had come out at some point during the chase. She didn't know when. He was watching her with his jacket open and his hands in his pockets, and he had that expression she was starting to recognize, the one that looked like he was filing something away. You didn't wait for backup, he said. She was going to be gone in 30 seconds, Mara said. She could have been armed. She wasn't. You couldn't have known that. I made a reasonable assessment, Mara said. She held up the device. We have the key. He looked at it, then at her. Reasonable assessment, he repeated. And there was something in his voice she couldn't quite read. Not amusement, not approval. Something between those two things that didn't have a clean name. What happens now, she asked. Now, he said, we deal with Victor. Wednesday moved like a held breath. Mara went to her apartment and slept 4 hours. She called the care facility in Henderson and asked about her mother's most recent blood work. She ate half a sandwich standing at her kitchen counter and thought about nothing except the sequence of the next 24 hours. She was back at the Obsidian by 8 in the evening. The confrontation with Victor Slade happened in his office at 10:47 p.m. Caruso walked in without knocking, which was the kind of thing he could do because his name was on the building. And Mara came in behind him, which was the kind of thing that made Victor Slade's face go completely still in a way that was worse than alarm. She had seen that stillness before. It was the expression of someone who had been running a calculation for a long time and had just watched a critical variable change. Raphael, Victor said. His voice was composed. This is a surprise. I imagine it is. Caruso sat down across the desk without being invited. He looked completely comfortable, which Mara was beginning to understand was the most dangerous version of him. I know about Thursday, Victor. I know about the buyer. I know about the Rhodes file, and I know about the 3 previous transfers you've made through the Meridian holding entity. Victor's eyes moved to Mara, just briefly, then back to Caruso. Who is she? He asked. Someone who's been looking for something you stole 4 years ago, Caruso said. And someone who found it, which means we have the key and we'll have the drive in the next hour. And the sale you had planned no longer has an asset to sell. He leaned forward slightly. What I want to know is who gave you authorization to move against my operation from inside my own house. Victor Slade sat back. The composure held, but it was working now. She could see it working, the way a dam works when the water level rises. You can't prove any of this, he said. I can prove enough of it, Caruso said. And the parts I can't prove I don't need to take to a court. He paused. The file, Victor. Where is it? I don't know what. The file. His voice was very quiet. The quietness of it was worse than volume. Victor Slade looked at his desk surface for a moment. Then he opened the bottom drawer and placed a silver case on the desk. Mara was across the room before she made the conscious decision to move. She unlatched the case, looked inside. The drive was there, small matte black, the kind that looked like nothing until you knew what it was. She pulled the tablet from her bag, connected it, ran the verification code she had built 18 months ago for exactly this moment. The screen returned green text. Her hands were shaking. She hadn't let them shake in 4 years. She allowed it for exactly 3 seconds, then closed the case and straightened. Caruso had watched her without turning away from Slade. She's confirmed it? Yes, Mara said. Her voice came out even. He nodded once. He stood. He looked at Victor Slade with an expression that had nothing in common with the man who told her reasonable things in quiet voices. This was the version of Raphael Caruso that the FBI's file described in careful bureaucratic language that never quite captured what it was actually like to be on the other side of it. You're done, he said. Here, in this city, in this industry. If you contact the buyer, I'll know before you finish the call. If you go to the authorities, everything I have on your last 4 years of activity goes to a journalist I trust. You'll walk out of this building tonight with whatever's in your pockets and you'll keep walking. Victor said nothing. Do you understand me? Caruso asked. Yes, Victor Slade said quietly. They left him there. In the elevator, Mara held the silver case against her chest and stared at the floor numbers changing. Her heart rate was dropping back toward normal the way it always did after operational situations, she used to call them. The cold technical language of her former life. You could have had him arrested, she said. I could have, Caruso agreed. He was looking at the doors. Arrested means testimony. Testimony means things become known that are currently not known. This is cleaner, she said. Don't be naive, he said, without particular heat. You know how this works. She did. That was the part she had been trying to stop knowing for 4 years. The elevator opened on the executive floor. He walked her to his office, poured 2 glasses of water, not alcohol, just water, and set one in front of her. She sat. She set the case on the desk. For a long moment, neither of them said anything. The file will clear you, he said. The chain of access logs, the metadata, it establishes definitively that your credentials were used from an IP. You were never near on a night you were documented as being somewhere else entirely. He paused. The DIA will have to acknowledge the error. They'll do it quietly, she said. There won't be any announcement? No, but your name comes off the list. Your record is corrected. You stop being a person of interest. She looked at him. The overhead light in his office was low. He seemed to prefer it that way, and in it he looked different from the man on the casino floor, still precise, still contained, but the performance of the public-facing version of Rafael Caruso was gone, and what was underneath was not simpler, but— "You held up your end," she said. "I have the file." "I can go, you can," he said. "That was the agreement?" "It was." She didn't move. He looked at her across the desk and said nothing, which was its own kind of statement. She had learned in the last week that silence was Rafael Caruso's preferred form of pressure. He didn't push, he simply waited and let the weight of the unsaid do the work. "My mother is in a care facility in Henderson," she said. "She has an autoimmune condition. It's manageable, but the medication is expensive and the facility is good, and I can't uproot her. I can't take her somewhere cheaper, somewhere that isn't staffed the way it is. She doesn't know what I've been doing for the last 2 years. She thinks I work in hospitality." "You do work in hospitality," he said. Something close to a laugh came out of her. She didn't quite expect it. He leaned forward, his elbows on the desk. "I meant what I said in the lot. You have my word that you walk, no obligations, no claim on what you know." He studied her. "But I also meant what I said in the corridor the first night. You operate here without my knowledge. That's a problem. If you're going to be in this city, if you're going to stay, I want to know. You want to know where I am," she said. "I want to know who you are," he said, "which I realize is different." She looked at the silver case on his desk, the object she had rebuilt the last 4 years around. The thing she had been so certain would feel like something enormous when she finally had it. It did, a little, but the feeling was quieter than she'd expected, and sitting across from him, she was aware of something she hadn't planned on. She didn't know what she was outside of this mission. She had held the mission so long, in the place where other things used to live, that she wasn't sure there was a shape there anymore. "I need time," she said, "to deal with the file, to figure out what clearance looks like on the other side of this." "Take it," he said, "and then I need to see my mother." "Of course." She stood, picked up the case, moved toward the office door. "Maya," he said. She stopped. She didn't correct the name. "When you've done all that," he said, "come back." She looked at him over her shoulder. He was still behind the desk, jacket off, hands loose. He looked like a man who had decided something and was at peace with the decision. She thought about the first night in the corridor, the way he hadn't been surprised when she moved. Not after the initial second, not once his brain caught up to what had happened. The way he'd looked at her afterward, like she was something he finally had a word for. She thought about her mother's voice on the phone that morning, asking how work was going, and Mara saying fine, just fine, same as always. She thought about 4 years of being a ghost of herself. "No promises," she said. "Understood," he said. She walked out. The Nevada sky at 2 in the morning was enormous. She stood in the Obsidian's empty front drive and looked up at it for a moment, the silver case in her hand, the desert air cold and clean against her face. In her pocket her phone buzzed. A text from the care facility. Her mother had had a good day. She'd eaten a full dinner and asked the nurse to put on an old movie, one of the ones with the dancing. Mara stood there a little longer than she needed to. Then she walked to her car. She didn't know what came next. She had not built a version of her life that accounted for what happened after. She had a file to decrypt and submit, channels to navigate, a formal process that would take months and cost her things she couldn't predict yet. She had a mother who thought she worked in hospitality and deserved to know the truth eventually, when there was a truth to tell that wouldn't frighten her. She had a city she hadn't chosen and had started to know too well to leave easily. And she had the particular, inconvenient memory of a man who had looked at her in a corridor after she'd moved to defend herself and said, simply, "There it is," like he'd been waiting for her to stop performing for long enough to see who she actually was. She didn't go back the next day, but she didn't leave Las Vegas either. She stayed in the small apartment in North Las Vegas and visited her mother twice in 1 week, for the first time in 8 months, and stood in the care facility's garden on a Thursday afternoon, watching her mother walk slowly between the flowering sage bushes, and thought, "I am still here. I made it to the other side of this." It turned out to be enough of a foundation to build something on. 3 weeks later, she walked back into the Obsidian. Not through the service entrance this time. Through the front. Rafael Caruso was in the lobby, meeting with someone she didn't recognize, and he looked up when she came through the door. He finished his sentence. He shook the other man's hand. He walked across the lobby toward her unhurried, like a man who had been expecting her on no particular schedule. He stopped in front of her. "You came back," he said. "I said no promises," she reminded him. "You did," he agreed. She looked at him. She thought about all the reasons this was complicated and all the things she still didn't know about him and all the places where this could go wrong. She held all of it clearly in her mind, the way she had been trained to hold difficult information without flinching away from it. Then she thought about how she hadn't flinched from it yet. "I have conditions," moved. "Tell me your conditions," she told him. He listened without interrupting. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded. "All right," he said. She hadn't expected him to agree to all of it. She'd built negotiating room into the conditions exactly because she expected him to push back on at least two. He hadn't pushed back on any. She would find out later, over time, that this was simply how he operated. When he decided something, he decided it fully, and he didn't equivocate. It was maddening in some ways. In others, it was the steadiest thing she'd ever stood on. "One more thing," she said. "Of course," he said. "If you grab my wrist again," she said, "I'll do more than put you against a wall." Something in Rafael Caruso's expression changed. The precision and the control and the calculation that lived behind his eyes parted for just a moment, and what came through was something that looked, improbably, like relief. Like a man who had spent a long time in a city full of people who said yes to everything he did, and had been waiting, without admitting it even to himself, for someone who wouldn't. "Noted," he said. She extended her hand. He shook it. His grip was firm and brief, and he didn't hold it a second longer than he had to. "Come on," he said. "There's a lot to discuss." She walked with him, and Las Vegas spread out around them through the lobby glass, enormous and indifferent and blazing with light, the kind of city that made you feel like anything was possible if you were willing to pay the right price for it. Maya Chen was gone. Mara Callahan was still being put back together piece by piece. But she was here, she was standing. She had her name back, and the woman who had walked into the Obsidian with nothing but a uniform and a secret had walked out of it with something she hadn't thought to look for: ground. That, she decided, was enough to start.